Was the Outlaw a complete failure? Well, failure is a heavy word, and in the straight definition, I don't exactly think so, but it is a complicated situation, and I want to discuss it just a little bit. Now, I do apologize, this commentary is not going to be as smooth. I am still very, very sick, but I'm finally able to talk, so I've begun to yap again with some commentary to get ahead of work, but I do apologize, it's not going to be the cleanest or the nicest to listen to. Let's start at the base fundamental. So the Outlaw itself is not a terrible weapon, but when it was first released, a lot of people were calling it overpowered. Now, I am proud to say I did not. If you go back to my original videos, I called out the fact that I didn't think it was going to be too strong, and shout out to Dr. Freeze as well, because he also believed that, and I think basically everyone else thought it was going to be OP, but at least everyone I watched or played with thought it was going to be absolutely broken. They were extremely worried, and I was always confused. Even as I was playtesting it, and they were saying it was broken, I couldn't grasp how they were thinking it. It never made sense to me, so I'm glad that now that it released to the public, my thought process did bear some fruits, and I understand why, especially more now than before. Now, I don't like pro play too much. Not that I hate it, but because it's all that any other YouTuber ever talks about. If pro play does X, you should do Y equals Z. Doesn't make sense. I'm for the casual, not the pro. Now, here's my thought process here. Even if we do look at the pro scene, not too many pros are using the Outlaw, and it is good to mention that regardless. On top of that, the pros that do use the Outlaw are the same that will use any other sniper. Think Chamber or Jet. Good, now let's trickle that down to the bottom. A lot of the same rules apply, because regardless of pro scene, mid ranks, or the bottom ranks, no matter how you play, there's inherent combinations in the game that were designed for each other, right? Jet and Chamber are designed for the abuse of snipers, right? It's just very rare that you have a Brimstone running around on attack with an operator out. Okay, I mean, unless it's my ranked games, but regardless, the fact is it's not going to be ideal regardless of the rank. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad or whatever. There are base fundamentals in a tactical shooter like crosshair placement, like gun combinations, like agent combinations that will always just benefit every single rank, and the Outlaw is no exception, right? It is already backed into the corner of being a niche weapon. It is a sniper, same way any shotgun, even if Riot released a new shotgun, is going to be a niche weapon. So I never expected to see that much play just because of that alone. Just because of that alone. Okay, great. Now, it gets a little bit worse because the Outlaw's release was always going to be niche regardless of the weapon type. The reason is it was designed to inherently solve a meta problem, which is kind of unprecedented if you think about it, right? When a game is imbalanced or there's a meta a developer doesn't like, it's not, I mean, it does happen, but especially when it comes to Riot Games, it's not normal for them to actually introduce something completely new to try and break it or shift it up. But when they went to the drawing board, it wasn't about making Light Shield different or more expensive or whatnot. The fix to the Light Shield meta was a completely new weapon. And the fact that the Outlaw's existence comes from the fact that it's supposed to curb the Light Shield meta inherently was going to always make sure it gets released weak, because the Light Shield meta is a pro play meta. The truth is, for you and I, while the Light Shield, while we saw pro plays utilize the Light Shield and we're like, okay, we can pick up the Light Shield, it won't be bad for us. We weren't in solo queue universally as a team going only Light Shield to stack our economy and help us win the game. That just wasn't happening. I wasn't hitting tab and telling 3 people, yo, buy the Light Shield because that's what the pros are doing and it'll save us money. There was no Light Shield meta for a majority of the Valorant players. Like 95% of us knew what the Light Shield meta was, but never really experienced it and brushed it off. It's not like we were complaining like when Chamber was overpowered. It wasn't like the Chamber meta where it was affecting everyone and we were all frustrated. The Light Shield meta never affected us. It affected the stage. It affected the performance on the big screen. And the Outlaw, from the ground up, was designed to stop that from happening. That inherently always backed this gun into a corner. Okay, but the Outlaw exists, so what now? Well, there's also the complete other discussion. I made a video a long time ago mentioning that I believe in general the variety of guns in Valorant always felt a little bit sad because the percentage play rate on guns is abysmal across the board. When is really the last time you saw someone pick up the Ares in your ranked game? The Outlaw is simply no different. There are some key guns that do see some more play, right? So outside the Vandal and Phantom, The Sheriff, the Ghost, the Operator all see elevated play, but it drops quite hard. Bucky and Judge do see some play, at least more than, of course, the Ares. But in the end, when it comes to guns outside the very primary, like Marshal, Sheriff, Ghost, Vandal, Phantom, Operator, the rest do fall off a cliff. Like how much you hate the Odin or you have terrible memories of like 5 irons running you down with an Odin, it doesn't really matter. Inherently, the Odin is barely used comparative to other guns. That's just a fact, right? Like that is just a straight fact. So Valorant itself already never had a variety of guns, but not a variety of usage in these guns. The meta doesn't shift up much depending on the gun, but they very much can be extremely impactful, and I actually think the Valorant community underweighs their impact. For example, if you just have a very strong rat judge player, they can completely destroy you guys. Like they can add so much pressure into the game, but Valorant players inherently don't adapt these play styles. It doesn't matter if a big streamer plays like that. We've seen Dasner kind of go crazy with the Cypher judge. It doesn't really matter. Even if we see it, players don't adapt it. We have a habitual habit of buy the Phantom or the Vandal. If you need to save, make sure next round you can buy the Phantom or the Vandal. And unless these habits ever change and Valorant players themselves become a little bit spicier, a little more creative, much is not going to happen. Riot can inherently buff a gun, but it won't do much good. Like the Judge is already strong, but it doesn't see too much play, right? Relatively to the Phantom Vandal, it doesn't see too much play. That's just how it is. They can't just buff every gun. When the Ares was absolutely broken, it had to literally be better than the Vandal and Phantom. Some of you guys will remember this. When the Ares was better than the Phantom and Vandal for like, was it 1 patch or something? And then Riot was so scared, they didn't balance it. They nerfed it so hard that it was worse than the previous Ares before its buff. Like Riot's also enabling the habits is what I'm trying to get at. I'm sorry, that wasn't very cohesive of me. But Riot is trying to enable these habits as well. They're like, yeah, Phantom Vandal's our main gun, and that's what I want to see most people buy. They don't actually buff the other guns, and if they do and it goes the wrong way, they get scared. They get very, very scared. But Valorant would be a very different game if we saw a little bit more gun variety. And I would love to see a little bit more gun variety. It could be elevating other guns, changing up the economy a little bit. Like we would see more Outlaw if it wasn't so damn expensive. The Outlaw is in a terribly placed price range. That is just a fact. Same thing with kind of the Guardian. They are too close to the Vandal and Phantom, so players will almost never buy it because they can just wait. They don't get ballsy with it because they can just wait. Actually, what am I saying? Not even wait. Sell an ability or go light shield and there you go. Buy the Vandal. And because I'm thinking that way, the enemy's thinking that way, which means what? Means the enemy also doesn't buy the Outlaw, meaning my light shield purchase doesn't even get punished. So I hope it kind of makes sense. I think if they just lowered a little bit, the Outlaw would see some more play. And I'm going to go ahead and apply this across the board. Hit that buy menu, look at all these guns, and change them up a little bit. Maybe tweak their aggressiveness, tweak their stats, tweak their price range. Do it in a way where the Vandal and Phantom doesn't have to always be the primary gun. Some of you might absolutely hate this because I know a lot of you here probably love overtime just because everyone's gonna have a Vandal or Phantom and it's gonna be nice and simple, and I can kind of respect that. So if you disagree with me, that's fine, because if you love the way Valorant is now and you don't want to deal with more guns or more complex gameplay or other different strategies, that's also valid. I can't devaluate your opinion. You could have more fun with its simplicity. I personally would love to see more creativity, and I definitely find it interesting that the Valorant community themselves don't actually, like, they're not very creative inherently when it comes to metas or changing things up. The player base themselves are not very creative. Look at Grim. Grim is very creative and has proven that it isn't just a meme. Like, Grim walls and playing Sage creatively is probably the only way to even make her valid, because she is quite low on the tier list right now across the board, not only my own but even other YouTubers tier lists. So she's not very meta, but Grim makes her meta by being so unique that the enemy players don't even know how to deal with it. Have you even thought the reason Grim is so successful when it comes to his gameplay and hitting Radiant, hitting those top ranks, is because Valorant players are so habitual that even in Radiant, they can't deal with when things get crazy, when things become super twisted, when things aren't meta, when things don't go the way they expect. The game sense gets thrown out the window. So by thinking outside the box, by changing up your gameplay, by being creative, you can also excel. This is even more true in the lower ranks when you can throw them off even crazier. When I played Sage for just a little bit, I tried to mimic Grim's playstyle and found success. I just don't love Sage, so I didn't keep it up. And if Riot's patches enabled that, we would have a lot more of an exciting game. But that's just my opinion. Thanks for listening to me yap, even though I'm extremely sick. I need to really shut up and go drink water now. Okay, bye.